this is the video I wanted to make about Frankie that I've never talked. I don't think I've ever talked about this in a video. I don't know if I did make this, and it's so crazy because it's the same way, it's the same settings as when Frankie got surgery when my mom had her baby taken from her arms on her very birth bed. So what happens is Frankie had surgery. On his intestines, and he got, I remember the stitches were probably about from yay to yay big, I'd say. It was right across his intestines, about an incision from here to here, but it was below his belly button, below the belt, and above his crotch. It was his intestines, directly on his intestines, and they had to cut his intestines open. When at the time I was like 7 years old or 6. I was like 6 years old. Yeah, I was about 6 years old. Frankie could have been 9 to 10. I don't think Frankie was older than I know Frankie wasn't older than 11 years old. He was somewhere around 9 to 10 to 11 years old. And we went, I didn't even remember there being like a preparation for surgery very much in our house. I don't know if this happened all of a sudden. I may have been told, but it's so vague to me at this point. But I do remember, I think Frankie was planning to have surgery, and there was something that happened, and it's like, oh yeah, Frankie had to have surgery. Or I don't even know even if it was, or I don't even remember this. It's so vague. But Frankie had to go to the hospital, and he had to get surgery. Now, I wasn't informed what it was, but I asked my mom, like, what do you have surgery? Oh, no, I don't know. So my mom had a way of describing when, you know, when you tell a little boy or your brother and sister, and the mother says, oh, le pegué un cucu, you know, and you say cucu, you know, like a Spanish word, which is common. Different cultures use different syllables and different meanings to interpret to a child, you know, without going into the details, that it was an ouchie, it was an ow, you know, you do these sort of symbols and pronunciations, and simple that makes it easier, that you just know that it was something that was bad and painful, and that something that you should care about, and isn't fun. So he had surgery, and I remember Frankie, my dad, we walked into the room, and I happened to walk into the room. I don't know what it was. I don't even remember walking the hallways or any of that. I just remember walking into the room, and I saw Frankie, and he was naked, and he was walking. My dad was on his right side, and I want to say, I think there was either a nurse or it was my mother helping Frankie, one on each arm, and was carrying him, and Frankie was walking. He started to walk, he was and he started crying, and I remember he started crying because it was hurting him really bad, and he was like naked. I could see everything, and he was just walking, and I remember looking, whoa, Frankie, you're naked, and I was like, because at the time I didn't even know that. Whoa, Frankie, you're naked, you know, like, to me, like, at this point, I don't even remember him being raped, because when me and him got raped when we were in my uncle's house, it was like that. I was hiding here, I was beating on the door, I just heard, I smelled, I saw red. The actual physical confrontation between me and Frankie and my uncle was like that, very quick, and it was over, and it was just like shuffling in different places, and like cutting this guy going crazy. So I don't even remember this. Like at that time, like, oh, you know, we're heroes. It isn't that. It's just like, oh, he's kind of, that's Frankie, you know, kind of sort of feel to it. So, but I'm like, oh, whoa, yo, Frankie. So Frankie is, because he has to go to the bathroom, and then they help him to the restroom, and he's like crying. I don't know still to this day what it was. I don't know if it was my dad or my mom said something, saying something that they didn't go into details. I don't know if it was like a year later or I overheard something, but it was something I think that happened with his testicle that shot up into his intestines, and it got stuck. And that happens to a lot of guys. I didn't know this person, but I know Richard Murphy used to make fun of this one guy all the time about this happening to him. But it's happened to some guys, and I know that a lot of the football players, when we eat at lunch, they talked about it. Like, you have to be careful, because it's something where the men, like when the men like flinch too hard, like you try to masculate too much, and this roaring, you'll mess up your groin. And what causes your intestines to shoot up into your intestines and get stuck, and you have to have surgery to either have it drop back down into the scrotum. But I don't know the medical terminology. I don't know what causes that. I don't know exactly, but it's caused by, like, if you're just clenching too much, and it doesn't happen. It can happen to everyone. The physical man's anatomy all has that ability. Like, if you do enough of it, just depending, on the circumstances, the human body's built for that to happen, but it's not supposed to. So that's to my understanding, that they had to make an incision and then remove that testicle and move it. I don't know the details, but there was nobody in the room, and I remember the lights not being on in the room. It was sort of fairly dark, and Frankie was, he was crying, and he was crying, and he was trying to walk, and he could barely walk. And I think it's important, because I remember my dad was next to him. He goes, come on son, you can, come on son. And he was doing that. And I think it's important for me to talk about, because I think I've talked about it before. I don't know. I think it's make a video about it. I don't want to be running in circles. But I don't know, unless it was his intestines. Something wrong. I don't know the medical records. You'd have to, I wasn't informed of anything, but I still don't know. I want to say that either my mom didn't want to talk about it, because I said, why did you have surgery? And then Frankie didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to say anything. So you can only imagine being 9 or 10 years old, having surgery like that, and then crying like that as a kid. So when he's being raped, and someone else decides to rape my brother, what else do you think you want to surrender in? So I think it's important to understand the trauma is a lot more heavier than people think it is before the glories of fame, the glories of money, the glories of Barack Obama and his intelligence, and the glories of, the archangels. But, I think it's important, because my life is limited, and he's my brother. And it does make it look like that everything I'd ever said and ever done in my life was just for a profitable gain, and thinking that I was the evil one, and that's exactly what did happen, when that wasn't the truth. But like I said, I think I had to put my mother out of this picture because of her mental state and what she's having to do, and my father no longer being alive. So I think it's important for me to say something about this. If y'all can look up the medical record, you can look up to see what it is. When somebody has surgery like that, you're 9 or 10 years old, what else do you think is waiting for you? You just came out of Children's Medical Center. Because I talked about what happened in Mexico. I was 5 years old. My uncle was 5 years old. What happened to what was the people after this? Guy shows up in Mexico to our house, does it again, or at least to me he does. I don't know if he did it to Frankie then again. Who else did I say? Tato, Abraham. We used to go to his house. What about that guy? Huh? What's going on there? That guy, that threw Frankie in the bathroom, that's around pretty close to that age when that happened. When Frankie went to the bar, this is only within a couple of years of that happening. when we went to Leach's house, there's another guy. That guy was waiting for us. That guy, let me tell you, that guy, that when we went to my dad's sister's house, and this guy was like, he looked native. He was fairly dark skinned, and he looked native, Mexican native, but he was in shape. He had a college degree. He went like a Oklahoma State University. This guy was waiting for us. This guy was waiting for her to sell and pawn off and work as a team to let this guy screw Frankie. I'm telling you, when we walked in there, this guy looked like he was a guy with like some, like, as we all think, you know, a big old black guy with a big old 15-inch dick waiting to screw his next inmate and make him his bitch. Excuse my word. Forgive me, Lord. I'm not supposed to be cussing. I'm trying to be better than this. His lady, his woman. This guy was standing next to Licha, like he was just like with this dong, just waiting, I'm gonna give you some of this right here. Like, this guy was in heat. This guy was just waiting. There was like the conversation and everything when we first walked in there wasn't anything about what piece of meat did you bring me to this cage. That's exactly what it looked like and how he behaved and what the setting was. We walked directly into that living room. Me, Frankie, the first thing my mother says, "Oh, this is my son." Like, she just gives an eye certainty like she doesn't usually give, because she knows this guy. Let me give you some of this now. And, you know, I think it's important because this is when Frankie kind of looks scared and nervous, and he's looking at this guy. And he knows that this guy wants him. But this is when this lady, she baits my mother in and out of that house like you would never believe. And this is the woman that was responsible for stealing all my grandpa's money. There was a big problem with my grandpa, who's a World War I veteran as well, who owned 2 different houses. Joe Palomo, who had a heart attack and stroke when we were kids when we lived there. But I think it's important to understand that, you know, Joe Palomo was a good Frank, really loved Frankie and really cared for Frankie, really liked Frankie and enjoyed my company. But he really treasured Frankie and always was wanting to buy him toys and stuff like that, really spoil him. So I think that it's important to understand this, when my grandpa died, this Leisha woman was responsible for stealing all the money. Like, all the family, you can ask Richard Palomo, Robert Palomo, Sarah Cooper. They all tell you that. All of the families said that she was a thief. She stole all the money, and they all hated her. Nobody talked to her again. But this woman, when we walked into that house, I'm telling you that when we walked, and you got to understand, Licha came over to our house either before or after. If she's willing to do that, imagine what she was predatory being toward Frankie when I wasn't looking. Because they're coming into our house and they're threatening my mother. Remember the dumbass things? Remember the dumb, small brain that you have that my mother has? She's not very smart. That's exactly what's going on. I believe that that's what that lady was doing. But she behaved differently with me. But anyway, we get to that house, and this guy, there couldn't have been anything more sexual that you could see in this guy. I mean, this guy was like standing, the way that this guy was standing was like, I'm gonna get me. Oh, I'm like he was like, he looked sexually aroused, and he was like, I'm gonna take over. It couldn't have been more like, what are you going to sell me for sex? Like, there's a little kid. And, you know, this is about 10 years old. Yeah, I'm about 10 years old when this happens. And I get poisoned to death, and talk about collapsing the phone, foam was coming out of my mouth. And I think it's important for me to say this because, you know, my mother got dragged out of that house. This lady was crazy. This lady was dragging my mom out of the house like, you wouldn't even believe it. But I think it's important for me to talk about because, you know, when you have surgery, on top of all these people, guess what now? Your intestines. How does that affect your mind, the little kid, 270-pound guy now coming over, but you're in martial arts now. There's your confidence going there. So I think it's important. I'm not the professional. It is too late. Glories will reign upon the correct people and wrong people, and whatever story they make up now. I think that this could have been covered sooner. Even if years went by, it could have been happened in my 20s, but it is too late, and that was the reason why. They wanted to keep it under wraps. And they did. And they successfully got their money, and they successfully made sure I didn't get it, make sure, the community went after me on my job sites, make sure I didn't make the money, I wasn't get anything for free, and they separated the emotions and who got this treatment credit. So, I can't believe I forgot that part of it. I wouldn't say I forgot, but yeah, because it happened very fast. Because he was at our house, and I remember him laying in bed, and me helping him, giving him like some water, some food. But my mom and I remember my dad didn't want me to go to the room. And I want to say my dad, he goes, "No, get her, no, don't go in there." And so my dad and my mom were like, especially my mom was going in there, but they didn't want me really kind of too close to him. But that was the truth. I went in there a couple times to bring him some food, some water or whatever, and he was laying in the bed because he couldn't get out of bed. But it was like, I think he had the stitches in for a week, but I remember seeing the stitches. The stitches were yay big. They were in his intestines. So I don't know what it was. That's what I think. I know Frankie wasn't openly wanting to talk about it. But I want to say, because my mom, like the way that she would say something and maybe looking in the mirror and like talking to me as I was like, checking myself out or whatever, my mother would be like, "Oh no, and so she would say this. She would say it like that. So I have to interpret, and I have to make sure, because my mother didn't say he had his testicles that went up and he had hemorrhoids or whatever that's called. I thought it was not called hemorrhoids. I don't know what it's called, but it does that. And so I think it's important for me to talk about for those that want. But I remember this guy wearing an Oklahoma State University. I was in there, and he said, either he said this or Alicia said this. Said that he had a business degree, a bachelor's in business degree, and this guy had a full set of hair. This guy was healthy. This guy looked like he went on jogs frequently. He was pretty muscular and fit. He looked like he played golf. I think this guy played golf a lot. He played golf. I'd seen this guy a few times before, no more than 3 times. And this guy wore like sort of like the Indian loafers kind of shoe, or to me it was a very common shoe that white people and golfers wore. I always related these shoes to the rich. Always related these shoes to the whites that played the white life sort of culture. And that was, they wore these shoes and they always drove their Mercedes, and they were, played golf. And I think this guy was a popular guy that played in golf. So you may want to look into that. I'm almost positive this guy, I think, played golf. And, but he was he was fit. I mean, he was a lean, 215. He was like a 215 pound lean guy. Not, ripped or anything, but he was like in his 40s, but he looked like he could work in construction with ease if he was forced to. And wasn't like fat, you could see some definitions in the arms, like kind of like mine, where you see muscular, there's a lot of hand movement going on, and very thick hair on the top of his head. So I think that I think it's worth talking about. I remember him wearing, I want to say he had a ring. He had an OU ring or something like that. But I remember seeing that. He from the Oklahoma State. Could be wrong. Maybe it was OU to something else, or the letters OU, Oklahoma. I don't know. So I think it's important. I can't even imagine, having surgery like that, because he was in pain. Frankie was like 9 years old. I was very young. I was like 6 years old. This is like right after the Michael Jackson. Yeah, this was like right after Michael Jackson. This is like right after the Michael Jackson situation. No more than within 2 years of that happening. No more than that, because I remember being so young, not really understanding why I'm going into this hospital. I want to say that I don't know if Julian was born yet. I don't think Julian was born yet, because I'm 6.5 years older, 7 years older than Julian. I'm like 6.5. I think my mother was either. Yeah, it was right after. I think we came home from Mexico. It was because I was second grade. I used to go to sixth grade. When I was in second grade, see, Frankie's 4 years older than me, so he would have been in sixth grade when I'm in second grade. So, which is correct, because I used to go to Melissa to pick her up, and they were in the same grade. And this was before then. This was before Melissa. This was before Melissa moved into that house. Yeah, I want to say that I think it was. It was before, or right when Melissa moved in, or right before. So you may want to look into that. You may want to look into what that circumstance is in. It could have been something else. I don't know if a little kid is capable of doing that. I don't know if they had surgery on his intestines because of the sexual rape itself. But I know that this is really brutal, because he's having surgery and then he's being raped, and then 250-pound guy. Anyway, you make of it what you want. I'm not the professional. You're smarter than me. Big brains.